I ordered food on this app called Uber Eats, and they dropped the food off. And when I opened to get it, the basset hound just got out, and there was a woman jogging down the street, and Basco just followed her, and I had to run. I'm in like my underwear and a t-shirt and socks, running down the street, and she wouldn't stop. She kept looking back and just kept running. I was like, please just stop for a second so I get my dog. She never did. I ran all the way to the botanical gardens to get him. She never stopped. And finally,
if I see some old man running behind me in his tighty whities, I'm not going to stop.
Well, I mean, they were boxers. Come on. But I mean, yeah, she wouldn't stop. And the only reason Basco would still be following her right now, except that he got distracted by his nose and stopped and did, by the gardens. So yeah, the nightmare continues over here at the old Yeller Barn, and Basco, calm down there. Anyway, enough of this nonsense. Well, welcome everybody to BeerNet Radio. This is your Wednesday warehouse segment where we go over the week's news. We have Jen Litz-Kirk, Jordan Driggers, and Bianca Bruno here, our beer editors. And lots happening. We've got Cagny. We had the threat of tariffs that are not anymore. We've got Berkshire Hathaway investing in Constellation, even though there are looming tariffs. So, Jen, why don't you get us started on the week's news?
But yeah, basically news broke Friday that Berkshire Hathaway bought more than 5.6 million shares of Constellation, ending 2024 with, I think, shares worth more than 1.2 billion. Now, I think the news was that they got in December. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jordan.
Yeah, sometime over Q4.
Okay, sometime over
that's
Q4.
All that, filing tells us.
So safe to say they've lost money so far. But, when Warren Buffett invests in something, it's a long-term play for him. So that, I think, bodes well. Not for nothing. Berkshire Hathaway was at our conference last month. So, we like to think we had we didn't have anything to do with it because it was after they bought, but still.
We caused them to lose money, following my lead.
Yeah.
Well, and it's kind of not surprising because Warren Buffett is always been bullish on consumer goods. Obviously, he's a huge shareholder in Coke, and they own McLane, which is one of the largest kind of C-store food distributors in the country. And they own parts of Kellogg, I think, and a bunch of other stuff.
Flying J too.
Yeah, they own Flying J C-stores, truck stops, I guess they are. So yeah. And then also, Jen, I thought you had a great report yesterday, gathering some True Squad intelligence from the street on pricing and what's going on with these ICE raids. And I living in San Antonio, I've talked to some pre-salesmen here that some of the stores on some parts of town are just barren, like ghost towns. So talk to us about that.
Yeah. Do you want the short version or the long version?
I want the long version.
Okay.
Yeah, let's go long.
Let's take it from the top. All right. Yeah. So last week, we emailed maybe 50 of our truth squatters with two questions, as Harry said. And that was, what's the deal with pricing since we haven't seen a lot of action this spring so far? And how was Super Bowl? And a lot of them answered. And these are wholesalers from across the country of all different sizes, but they tend to skew larger. Quick notes on pricing. Generally, supplier-led hikes this spring have been way more conservative than usual. They are taking price. The big three are taking price in some areas, but it's surgical where they are. And there have even been some rollbacks. That's the 30,000-foot view. It also sounds like Mark Anthony is going up in some markets, which is interesting, acting more like a big brewer. And then for Super Bowl, results weren't fantastic. Out of more than a little over 20 responses, only 5 said that they were good. A lot of inventory left on the floor. And as you said, Harry, a lot of it may be related to this ICE immigration raids going on around the country. Many wholesalers flagged that as a concern. We had some other quotes from different wholesalers about that, but this came in after the story ran and said, ICE is definitely having a major impact on Mexican brands and has me questioning how much we overestimate the general market purchasing behavior within import volume. We're more than 10% off on what has been a relatively easy to project budget on imports. So, I mean, I've also heard they think it's more than just illegals who are hiding out. It's also legal people who are afraid of mistakenly getting deported. And, it seems like we are hearing this from enough wholesalers in enough parts of the country, and some are hopping mad about, the policies. We'll see if this is a short-term thing or.
Yeah, I mean, we were so focused on the tariff side of the story that I kind of missed the whole effect that ICE raids would have and people just not going and out.
Hiding out.
Yeah. And so, how much of a headwind do you think that'll have on Modelo?
I mean, that's what this one wholesaler saying they're more than 10% off of, that's maybe not all Modelo and Corona, but that's going to affect first, you would think. Also Bud Light. I mean, there's a lot of Mexican drinkers, that drink Bud Light. So
a lot of people positioned it from like a constellation standpoint, but I think if it's that severe, then it's going to affect mass American domestic, whatever you want to call it, too, because that's just in their wheelhouse as well. It is. I don't know how you can measure that impact, though. And it does seem like it's been said, and then a lot of people have been asking about it and then kind of getting confirmation that, yeah, that is a factor. But since the start of the year, the weather has been terrible. I mean, you had the fires in California, and now it's just freezing everywhere. So it seems like a culmination of things that have led to bad trends. Also, Constellation is just humongous now, and we always figured that their growth was going to run out at some point, and maybe that's just part of it too.
Bill Newland said at our summit that it's more of a factor of the consumer demand. Traffic is slower. Walmart just lowered their guidance for 25 because of traffic. I would say the good news is that this is just January and February, which is typically volatile for the beer industry anyway, because there is so much weather patterns that come and go, and also it's just a low volume time of year. So it's not that big of a deal if you're going to be down in January and February. Is the point. Right. But, Super Bowl sales were slow, at least in the off-premise. Now, we are getting word that on-premise sales have been pretty good. If you want to, on-premise sales are good, but also keep in mind that they've increased pricing more than off-premise has. So dollar sales and on-premise are good. We don't know how traffic is, but at least it's a mitigating factor.
Yeah, and Jordan, it's this would be a useful place for you to sum the Circana scans for Super Bowl week.
I mean, leading up to Super Bowl, it had been down week, and so everyone was kind of hoping, eyes turned towards Super Bowl, that we could get a lift, and that just didn't happen. It actually was down like 4% for beer. And that was a little bit lower than the 4-week trend leading up to it. So not only was there no lift, but it seems like sales kind of fell further. Now, Scott Scanlon did show that, compared to the previous week in 2025 to February 2nd, there was kind of a spike in sales that they've seen that he said was bigger than they've seen in previous Super Bowls. But you have to wonder if that was just because the sales leading up to this Super Bowl had been so poor that it was just more of a pronounced impact. But yeah, no real Super Bowl lift. The brands that are growing are Mich Ultra, Busch Light, at least for the top brands. And I think one thing that we've kind of forgot by now too is that we're still going against the Bud Light comps till April. So Molson Coors trends are still going against tough comps because last year Q1 sales were still really good because they hadn't set in yet. The same probably goes for Constellation and Modelo as well. So until April, you're still going to have tough comps as well, which I think after last year we kind of forgot about.
And I did get a note from Bump Williams, who his retailer contacts said that after the Super Bowl, there's still a lot of beer on the floor, a lot of inventory out in the trade, which isn't great news. Jordan, are you torrenting something over there? Are you downloading some huge files from NHS or something?
NHS.
No. Am I freezing up?
Yeah, you're freezing up. I think your internet's slow. That's all right. Anyway.
No torrenting.
Okay.
Not torrenting.
That you know of. All right, go ahead, Jen.
Just to circle back, there were a couple other things on the cutting room floor that didn't make the article that are just interesting. So we reported last week that Molson Coors did an RFP for wholesalers to secure distribution rights for Fever Tree in the U.S. And we're hearing that Mark Anthony is doing a similar RFP now from Moss Plus. So basically kind of opening it up to a whole bunch of wholesalers, like kind of saying like, hey, do you want this? What do you have in place? What infrastructure do you have in place for Roanoke? This sort of thing. Now, this is just a rumor that we've heard about Moss Plus, but it fits because it's Q1 and that's when they said that they would basically take it national. So more to come there. I'm bugging David Barnett on that. We also heard that RTDs are doing pretty well. In one market, Spirits RTDs siphoned 2 share points from malt beverages in 2024. This is just ambient chatter, again, from the Truth Squatters.
What about Fever Tree?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? Because I feel like mixers are not a very lucrative category to get into.
Well, I mean,
And
if you are going to get into mixers, Fever Tree would be the one. I actually met the CEO of Fever Tree last year in Miami at the Jeffries conference. So I'm wondering if maybe that's where the connection started because they were. But anyway, what I wanted to comment on that is that I think it's interesting that they're doing RFPs. That's a very wine and spirits thing to do. Mm-hmm. Typically, beer companies don't do RFPs. They just say, "Hey, here it is. It's going in our network, right?"
Yeah, right.
And to have an RFP, it's more of a, "Hey, what have you done for me lately?" In other words, what are you going to invest? It puts wholesalers in kind of has them over a barrel because they have to commit to investment if they really want the brands. And of course, non-alc does not have franchise protections in the way that beer does. And so that can't make wholesalers happy that we're moving to this RFP type model. Very, very wine and spirits ish. Another big story is that Sapporo is taking a pretty big write down on Stone. It kind of surprised me because they're not down that much. I don't know why they would take such a big write down on it. And obviously their largest investor wasn't happy about the write down. The Japanese brewers have just kind of thrown a lot of investment into the U.S. quickly. And so it takes time really to get that investment back. And so, Bianca, what are your thoughts on that and their response?
So, Sapporo was, one of the first, if not the first, Asian breweries to really invest in American craft and in having a presence here with Anchor, and then of course with purchasing Sapporo in 2022. And, the $92 million impairment is big. It's bigger than what they said they had to invest in their equipment last year for increasing their production capacity last year. They basically doubled it to about 700,000 barrels that they said that cost $60 million. And of course, we've, talked with them a lot over the past few months. They were at the summit. And while their craft business overall was down a bit last year, I don't know if we knew exactly how much. They have maintained their core was up 2% and that they haven't, necessarily lost share or dollars through their craft business that would be reflected in this impairment.
Right.
I'm wondering, Harry, you probably know more, but for an impairment charge, usually that's an admission that the brand is not worth as much as we paid, correct?
Yes, that's right.
Right. So with Sapporo, when they bought Stone, I think for 160, 180 million. So that's almost half of it right there on an impairment. But they're turning their production facilities into their own. So I guess what does that say about Stone? Because, they bought the brand and then kind of turned it into their own
something else. Yeah.
Yeah, their own thing. So I don't know how you kind of factor that into its value.
Yeah, I'm not a financial advisor or anything, but it basically means that they overpaid, which we kind of knew, right?
Yeah,
but the whole point of overpaying was, like you said, Jordan, was to get into the U.S. with production in a big way. So there was a reasoning behind it to get the deal done. There might be tax reasons why they would take an impairment charge. As an investor, you don't like to see that. So I could see why their largest investor is not happy with it. But like they responded to Bianca, hey, this is more of a timing thing. Like we have to take the impairment now, but in the long run, this is going to be good for our business in the U.S. because they can't rely on Japan with their declining demographic and just sluggish sales there. They have to invest elsewhere. And the U.S. is the most dynamic beer market in the world right now, I would submit. So it's, they had to do it, but taking the impairment charge is just kind of the medicine that they had to take to make it work on their balance sheet, because you gotta peer to peer, you gotta value things of what the market thinks they're worth on your balance sheet, not what you think it's worth 20 years from now to the company. So,
and of course, Boston took a few large impairment charges on Dogfish Head, so it's not unheard of in this era.
I think Monster continues to take him. I don't know if there is a brewer that has bought a craft brewer
recently that didn't,
at least public, and hasn't taken an impairment charge or just sold them
to
off
Constellation.
altogether.
Constellation is the grandfather of impairment charges. They love taking them. I mean, I was just looking at the cannabis stocks. Canopy Growth is just in the garbage. All of them are. I mean, Tilray is below $1. They might get delisted any minute now from the NASDAQ. And so, I don't think they will. I honestly, I think Tilray is probably the best position because they do have an actual business in the U.S., even if they don't have. And the reason their stock is down is because Trump got elected, and Trump is not a fan of cannabis. So, for the next at least 4 years, we're probably not going to see any movement on the legalization of cannabis in the U.S. At least they have an underlying business here with their craft brewers. Yeah. Well, the other thing I found interesting is that Molson Coors announced that they're going to extend the shelf life on their on certain of their brands, not all of them. And the difference that I it wasn't explicitly said, but the ones that are coal filtered, they did not extend the shelf life on, meaning Coors Light, Miller Genuine Draft, Banquet, the whatever's made in Denver, I think. Yeah. And then the others like Miller Lite that are in High Life that are made by pasteurization the normal way, they were somehow able to, I don't know if they boil it longer or what, I don't know what they're doing, but that's great news for distributors because managing old beer in the market is probably one of the hardest things that a beer distributor has to do on a monthly basis is manage that. Everybody has an old beer problem. I don't care who you are. Everybody claims they don't have an old beer problem. It's the biggest lie in the industry. There is old beer in every market in the U.S. Yeah, and, some distributors are better about bringing it back and crushing it or whatever. Some distributors, they transship it or they ship it to Saudi Arabia or whatever. I mean, everybody has their kind of ways, but everybody's got a little bit of an old beer problem. But that just helps manage your inventory. It helps manage rotation. It helps, just manage beer out in the trade if it can be there longer. So
Coors Light and Banquet did get extended on draft. They went from 9 to 13 weeks on draft. So they did get an extension, but not in package.
Right.
And Liney's too.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that was most of the top line. Yeah, I won't bring up anything else.
Go ahead, Jen.
No.
I don't want to hear.
Yeah, we can cut it post.
No, but we never do. That's never cut it in post. Well, I'll just say, AB is purporting that its American beer movement has gotten a lot of traction. It's certainly gotten some traction. There are also people in the industry who do not like it at all. And I will say, I do think one of my big predictions for this year, and I don't even know if we're doing predictions this year or not. It's almost March. Maybe we can make them halfway and then, really hedge our bet. But anyway, I do think that beer and bev alc this year will be more politicized than ever, like even beyond the Mulvaney stuff. I think we could even see a situation where it's like non-drinker versus drinker, and drinker is red and non-drinker is blue, or, type deal. So interesting times. I think it's tricky ground, potentially bringing the culture wars to all of beer, but I can also potentially see why AB is doing what they're doing. So we will see.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I didn't. I mean, obviously it is a culture war issue, but I didn't really see it that strongly that way. I guess when I was pitched it, I don't think the Beer Institute's going to change the designation because Heineken and Constellation are huge members of that organization, and they don't want to see that happen.
It doesn't sound like really Molson Coors wants to see it either, or if they do, they're pretending like they don't care. I haven't heard a whole lot of suppliers that have gotten behind it outside of, AB, obviously.
Right. Well, a lot of people are saying, who cares? This is just industry jargon, but it's not just industry jargon. It's on menus and it's on light boxes and back bar chalkboards. So it is more than just industry jargon. It's really not that big of a deal, honestly. But we are the only industry that I can think of that calls the U.S. made domestic.
Well, I mean, the problem is, though, that's a category within a category, right? If you say American beer, well, craft beer is American beer, but it's not domestic beer, right? So if a drinker thinks that America, where they like, am I getting craft beer here that's American made? Am I getting like a light beer? I don't know why it needed to be done, basically. I feel like it only stands to alienate and confuse. But, if you want to play into the populist movement, I understand why they would do that. So we'll see if it ends up being a big deal or not.
Well, and see, I would counter that by it's just domestic is just not a great word, and like I said, Leo Van Munching made that up as a derogatory word on purpose to help Heineken. So I mean, it's not a great word. It should have been American all along, and craft beer is American. I mean, the very little craft beer comes from other countries, so that's just it's a subset of American beer. When you go to Belgium and, it's a Belgian beer, there's German beer, there's, and then American beer is called domestic. And that was intentional. And I think what Brendan's trying to do is just correct that initial kind of faux pas that happened 70 years ago.
Yeah, but the consumer doesn't know any of that, right? They're going to go to the bar and say like, well, where's my domestics? What's American?
No, I don't.
You're just American.
I think if you're turning 21, you domestic might be more confusing. You're like, what is domestic? What is that?
But what's American, right? Like beer
American
made in America.
So what's Stella? Made here.
Is Stella American? Like,
yes, Stella is an American. It's an American.
Is that what somebody who orders an American beer expects to get? I don't think so, right? Like, maybe I don't know.
Maybe I'm too close to it, but domestic does kind of have a negative connotation, an inferior kind of regular connotation, to me. An import carries a higher end premium type of connotation. So Leo Van Munching did, a fantastic job in, defining.
Right. Is there any worse adjective? Domestic violence.
How about GDP, gross domestic product, right? Like,
we don't.
Hello.
Well, it used to be called gross national product, and they changed it in the 80s. I'm not sure why. I think Carter changed it.
Oh, there you go.
No, I'm just saying. I remember when it changed. I was a kid, and I remember my grandfather being pissed about it, but I can't remember why. Anyway, and honestly, we're arguing about it, but it doesn't really make that much sense. But
we'll see. I mean, we'll see.
What other news? Have we missed anything?
I'm sure we have. We got some earnings next week. We got AB in Boston, right?
Yep. Who else is speaking at Cagny?
Coke and Pepsi
Diageo.
spoke, and Diageo today.
Yeah.
Is that
And-
it? It's just Molson Coors and Diageo?
Yeah.
Huh.
But Molson Coors already had their earnings. So maybe that,
Oh, they're in a quiet period.
maybe that came into play.
All right. Well, guys, listen, I'd love to sit here and bullshit with you people all day because you're my people and I love you. And that's all there is to it. And we're at the tail end of this week. I want you to rest this weekend. You've been working hard and we'll just get right back at it on Monday and just start kicking ass again because that's what we do. And as far as predictions, I totally forgot. Like when you just mentioned it, I was like, wait, we haven't done predictions.
Yeah, no.
I don't know. Maybe we'll do that next week.
Okay.
Or if you don't want to, Jen.
No. We will. I just, it's so hard to predict.
Well, why don't we punt?
Well, I don't know. Jordan and Bianca might have some, and you might have some.
Yeah.
I thought beer was going to have a good year.
Well,
Cool.
It still
I have
could,
the exact
but it's
opposite
not looking.
picture.
Yeah.
so far not so good.
What if let's do this. What if we each do 2 to 3? That's it. So
Yeah.
it's your biggest and best.
Yes, I agree. Because otherwise it turns into a really long article. People don't like long. People get this issue at 5:30 in the morning
On the toilet.
on the toilet. They don't want a 300-word article. They want 100-word articles. So
A paragraph, in other words.
yeah, a
Yes.
paragraph. Right. Okay, maybe 200 words. All right,
right.
guys. Well, we'll see you back here next week on Beer Net Radio, and have a great weekend. Take care.
Bye.